Okay, so let's get started in the agenda. So the first thing we're going to start off with today is an introduction to the 2020-2021 list that just came out. 30 books are nominated every year by our fabulous reading committee, and kids read these throughout the entire school year, and then they vote on them in the spring. So voting for the 2019-2020 award is going on right now, so we'll be really excited to see who the winner of that is. And then after they introduce the new list, they're going to talk about the B list or the honor list, books that were really close to making the list but didn't quite sneak by. If you, in the email I sent out to all registrants, you'll see there's a link to a page on our website where you can follow along with the committee as they talk about the 2020-2021 nominees. I will be sending out the B-list document to attendees after the conference, or if I can put it together in our break, I will send that out as well. But you will have all of that information at the end. We'll have a brief 15-minute break while we get our fabulous keynote presenter set up. And from 12 to 1 p.m., author Susan Hood will be doing a keynote address. We'll have a tiny little break after that, and then she will start her workshop. So you're welcome to come in and out as you so desire. Just make sure that if you come in, your webcam and microphone are turned off. All right, skip to just a few notes before we begin. The 2019-2020 award voting deadline has been extended to May 26th since our kiddos are at home now, and we want to give librarians more time to collect votes from their kids. So the voting deadline has been extended to May 26th. And as I was talking about before, the name change information for our Vermont librarians has been emailed to the VISLA and VTAC listeners. And we are now accepting submissions from Vermont students in grades 4 through 8 for the new name. If you are a Vermont librarian or educator and you did not get that email, just send me an email. My contact information will be up on the screen later, and I can send you that information. Jonathan and Josh, did I miss anything in terms of housekeeping or that kind of stuff?
I just wanted to mention, if anybody is on their phone, I may have already muted you, but you can mute or unmute yourself by *6. *6 is the trick for if you're listening on your phone.
Yes. Awesome. All right. I am going to turn the stage over to Jonathan Clark, our new youth services consultant. He's going to introduce himself, and then we'll get started with the reading committee presentation.
Hello. My name is Jonathan Clark. I am the brand new youth services consultant in the state of Vermont. I'm so excited to be here. These are very strange times for all of us, and a strange time to in a new position in a new state. I just moved here from New York City. But I am very excited to be here and excited for the presentation, to hear from everybody, all our presenters today. And I'm really excited about everything that is happening. And I'm grateful to everyone who's helped make this happen, especially Jennifer, really put everything together and pivoted to make this a virtual conference. And we're really excited to still host this and to make it a really great thing for everybody. So we are really excited to hear from the committee, and we're going to first hear from Becky Rupp, the committee chair. So Becky, take it away.
All right, does this work?
Sounds good.
All right, fantastic. Well, we've got a couple of quick words about the reading committee before we get this totally off the ground. There are 8 of us, And we spend each year obsessively reading and discussing and nominating books, and then have an all-day marathon meeting in March at which we choose the list, usually whittling down a list of 60 to 70 nominees to 30, which is not as easy as it sounds, because once you've picked, say, 29 books and you've got one slot left, we all tend to be lurking like vultures over our final pick. But we've got a few changes on the reading committee coming up for this next year. Our longest standing member, Carol Oglesby, is leaving us. We're very sorry. Also, we're losing Jess Matera, who is stepping down. She's writing a novel about which we're all very excited. And Yvonne Bruneau. So many, many thanks to the three of you. We've loved working with you and we'll miss you. In the next year, we're looking forward to having returning member Sasha Krajek on the committee again, and new members Kate Bellucci and Katie Bosley. So we're looking forward to this and are thrilled to be having you. Looking forward to it. So let's get on to meeting the current committee, and we'll talk about the new list. Initially, we had the new list in all these clever little categories like scary foxes, wolves, and weird bears. But for purposes of simplicity with this new virtual format, I think we're just going to run through this in alphabetical order by title. So first, let's meet the committee members. I'm Becky Roop. I'm a writer and a scientist. This coming year will be my third year on the committee.
Committee members, this is Jennifer. Just make sure that you can turn your cameras on and microphones on now. I can unmute folks, but I can't do cameras.
Okay, we got Carol.
Oh, we do? Great.
I'm Carol Oglesby. I am the librarian at Mallett's Bay School, which is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and preschool.
Lori? Do we have Lori on?
I
am.
Oh, great.
Internet. This is Lori Williams. I am a K-6 librarian at Newbury Elementary School, and this is my second year on the committee.
How about Charlie?
Hi, my name is Charlie Farrell, and I'm a retired social studies teacher. I taught for 32 years in the Champlain Islands, and this is my third year on the committee.
Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Westbaum. This is my third year on the committee, and I'm a children's librarian in Montpelier, Vermont at the Kellogg Hubbard Library.
And Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Eckers. I'm a 3rd and 4th grade teacher and literacy coach at Hyde Park Elementary School, and this is my first year on the committee.
Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess Matera. I am the technology librarian at Champlain College, but previously was a youth services librarian in Worcester, Massachusetts.
And Yvonne. Do we have Yvonne on the phone?
Yes, I'm actually on. I actually was able to make it
Yvonne,
fantastic. Computer. Hi there. I'm Yvonne Bruneau. This was my first year on the committee. I am a circulation clerk for Rutland Free Library.
Okay, so now that you've got us all, I think we'll just roar right into this list, which I'm sure this is what you're all waiting for. So I will kick this off with A is for astrophysics.
Becky, we can't see you.
Okay. Should be on.
There you are.
Yay! Awesome. All right.
All right. A is for astrophysics. Actually, the title is Astrophysics for Young People in a Hurry. by Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's the young reader's version of his book for adults, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. And it's a terrific nonfiction pick. It's a chatty, reader-friendly overview of cosmology for kids. And it starts out literally with a bang, the Big Bang, saying, 14 billion years ago, the entire universe was smaller than the period at the end of the first sentence in this book. It's filled with catchy facts, infographics, terrific color photos, and a lot of really fascinating info. You not only learn all the basics, but a lot of little extras like where is Superman's home planet, and where is the tallest mountain in the solar system, and why Santa's workshop would be really much better off at the equator than at the North Pole. Chapter titles include things like how to communicate with aliens. It's all beautifully designed, irresistible nonfiction info. And who wouldn't want to take home a book called Astrophysics? So there you go. So next, B. The
B.
best at it. Take it away, Charlie.
Okay, B is for The Best at It by Malik Pankhuli. And in this book, Rahul Kapoor is a 7th grader growing up in rural Indiana, and he's just trying to find his way in the world. He's looking for his special gifts. What is he best at? And with the support of his friends and family, he begins his search for his hidden talents with pretty hilarious results. For example, his attempt at being a football star leads him to the emergency room. So, great book. You read along and follow Rahul as he travels on his road to self-discovery. It's a road that's full of pitfalls, but it's a fun ride. Here we go.
Okay, Bridge Home. Lori.
B also for The Bridge Home by Padma Venkataraman. And by the way, I listened to how her name was pronounced today before I said that. So that'd be my great public service for everyone today, was to figure out how to pronounce her name. This is a book, if there's ever a book you can define as short and sweet, but incredibly, incredibly powerful with a lot in it, it is The Bridge Home. It's the story of 2 sisters who leave a domestic violence situation in India, and they take to the streets of a major city, and they befriend 2 boys who are also in the same situation. There's a word on the back of the cover, unflinching, and that's what this book is when it comes to describing the homeless situation of children in India, but around the world. I'll never forget some of the scenes of the children picking through the landfills, the trash heaps, trying to collect things that they could sell to make money to survive. But with all of that, it's a story that is very hopeful. It's infused with hope. It's infused with, you hesitate to say a happy ending, but you're hopeful. And I just loved it. And I've also had experience with a teacher who has told me she's already used it. I think it was in 7th and 8th grade in middle school, and had great success in her classroom as a read aloud and for having kids connect with this issue. But it's accessible to younger readers as well. Very powerful, very hopeful, wonderful book.
Lori, it's you again with Charlie.
I know. I should have thought about this before. Hold on one moment. Okay. C is for Charlie Thorne in The Last Equation. So, as we were working our way through the list, I thought we need something that's just a rip-roaring adventure, and that's what this book is. It's by Stuart Gibbs, and Charlie is a girl, and she's 12 years old, and she's probably as smart as Einstein, I think is what they're thinking she is. And so the opening scene is Einstein on his deathbed, and at the end he says something that kicks off this big chase to find the last equation, which, by the way, is called Pandora. So that should give you a little clue as to the, potential of issues with that being found by the wrong people, in this case called the Furies. So this book, Smart is Cool. She's incredibly smart. She's also amazingly talented at all sorts of other things she has done and can do. Let's see. It's just a rip-roaring adventure. Like I said, it reminds me of it's kind of the deep water of last year by Watt Key, where we had that adventure story with that female protagonist. But this is I would say even a little more on the fun side than that one. Good stuff here. Lots of adventure.
Definite thriller.
Yeah, it is. Couldn't put it down.
Lori, don't go anywhere because it's you again.
So another book I couldn't put down, my beloved Dark Lord Clementine. Took one look at this cover and said, boy, at the age of 12, I wanted to be her. Check out that outfit. Check out those, kick boots and that blue hair. Our beloved Clem, as she gets called in the book, she is the daughter of the Dark Lord Alethior, so his heir to becoming the next Dark Lord. Being a Dark Lord means you are in charge of doing a certain amount of dastardly deeds. Every so often you have a certain number you have to do for the evil council of overlords. But what Clementine starts to notice is that her father is slowly disappearing. He's being chipped or whittled away by a new formidable foe called the Widow Witch. And so Clem tries to figure out how to save him from the Widow Witch, but she also, as she's doing it, comes across some new friends, and she's beginning to wonder if really being a Dark Lord is in her future. It's just not sitting all that right with her. And this is the story of her adventure of trying to save her father, find herself. There are unicorns in it. There are unicorn hunters in it. So that's always a little edgy there with that, but it's not edgy at all. It's, for me, it was a book that was a lot of fun, and it was also for sophisticated readers as well. There are a lot of connections to fairy tales and Arthurian traditions, town boys who want to be knights, and a castle that's losing its magic because her father is slowly being whittled away by this curse. Just a lot of fun stuff in this book. Dark Lord Clementine.
Okay, F is for free lunch. Carol. Carol?
Yes. Hi. Oops.
All right.
Aye. Okay, Free Lunch by Rex Ogle. This is the true story of Rex's life at the start of middle school and of growing up in poverty and trying to survive in a social environment where he feels the constant pressure of food insecurity, poverty, the lack of stable housing. He spends a lot of time caring for his younger brother, and I don't know, can you guys hear my bird?
Yes.
Sorry, he gets so excited in the morning. Anyway, Rex spends a lot of time caring for his younger brother, trying to protect him from the violence in their broken, desperate family. In the author notes at the end, Rex mentions that he wrote this book because he doesn't remember seeing books like this growing up himself, and how alone he felt. He didn't know that other people were dealing with the same kinds of problems. Rex watches his parents buckle and abuse each other and him due to the unending stress of being impoverished. A constant point is his shame at having to repeatedly tell the lunch counter cashier that he's on the free lunch program. So this is well written. It's packed with emotion. It's aimed at middle school, yet it's short enough to appeal to the demographic that would need such a story. It's on the shorter end. It's got just 200 pages, even less if you don't read the author note. And it fills a need for books about domestic violence, some insight into a world that some kids have no choice but to live in.
Okay, Jess, A Good Kind of Trouble?
Yes, A Good Kind of Trouble. So, Shayla is 12 years old and in middle school and feels like everything is changing. Common theme in these books, right? So Shayla is allergic to trouble. It makes her palms itch. She hates it. She's a major rule follower. And she feels like the rules are suddenly starting to change. One of her best friends is suddenly hanging out with a different group of girls. And her older sister, who's a teenager, is getting involved in all these different Black Lives Matter protests. And Shayla's interested, but also a little scared because it seems like maybe it's trouble. One day, her and her family go to one of these protests together, and she finds it really moving and powerful. And so she starts to wear a black armband in support of the movement at school, which causes a whole lot of trouble as her classmates start to want to wear armbands, and her principal does not appreciate it. So she learns that not all trouble is bad, and how to stand up for herself and be strong. It's a really sweet story about a girl kind of finding her voice.
Okay, I can make this promise. Carol? Carol and the Bird?
I'm back. All right. I Can Make This Promise by Christine Day is just a beautiful book. It is about a girl named Edie. She knows that her mother is Native American and was adopted by a white couple, but her mother never talks about her childhood. One day, Edie discovers in the attic a box of documents and old photographs with a woman who looks a lot like her who has the same name. And she realizes that her parents have been lying to her whole life. This book is based on the author's family history, on the U.S. government's role in separating Native children from their families, and in the way that Native Americans have been portrayed in film and other media with, stereotypes. As the mystery of Edie's name and family are solved, we experience her first glimpses of her Native family. This is an important book about a Native girl's journey to learn about herself and her people.
Okay, and this next book originally came under the category of Very Untrustworthy Cats, in which we had 2 books. So next up is Claude. Charlie.
My cat was very interested in Carol's bird sounds in the background. So in a galaxy far, far away, there is a planet called Litterbox. And on Litterbox, we have a despot ruler. His name is Claude. He is an evil alien warlord cat. And with most evil warlord cats, he comes to an end. His rule comes to an end. His followers take him captive and bring him to the supremest court of the world. And there he finds himself guilty of crimes against cats. And his sentence is to be sent, to be exiled to a dark, uncivilized planet that is rumored to be inhabited by cat-eating ogres or yogurts. This planet is the planet Earth. And so Claude is transported, he is exiled to Earth, and it's not just any part of Earth, it is Oregon during the rainy season. And Claude finds himself out in the open being drenched by one of these Oregon rainstorms. Well, being a cat, he has to decide whether he wants to keep on being wet or to maybe face one of these cat-eating ogres face to face. And he chooses to face the ogres. So he lets out a yowl. I guess it's supposed to be a meow, but it's a rather strange sounding meow. And the humans within the domicile open the door. And this is where we meet Raj. Raj is a middle school student who just recently came to Oregon. He has no friends because he's just arrived. And he looks at this cat as, a friend. And he immediately, I am being asked to rejoin here. There we go. Am I there? Hello?
Hi, guys. It looks like we're having some video issues.
I'm back?
Right now.
We can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay,
yeah,
so I can just. Okay, so I will keep going. So Raj adopts Claude, and what ensues is hilarious adventures. We wonder if Claude is going to make his way back to his home planet of Litterbox. Or is he going to stay a house cat for Raj? It is a hoot. It is a lot of fun. And as I understand it, this is just book one in the series. So we have more Claude to come. Enjoy.
Yeah, I think there are at least 4 already.
Yeah, 3 came out last year, and the 4th one came out this year.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, more Claude. All right, L, the last human. Aaron?
All right. Who doesn't love a good robot story? So this is The Last Human by Lee Bacon. And robots have taken over the earth, and they have eliminated humans because of what humans have done to the planet, kind of destroyed it. And these robots are getting constant reminders every day about how bad humans are, how they destroyed the earth, and what a great thing it was that the robots have taken over. So we're introduced to the main character robot, XR935. And he and his coworkers work on a solar farm. And they discover one day when they're out working a 12-year-old girl. And they're like, how can this be? Humans were eliminated. And the girl asks for their help. She had been living in an underground bunker with her family and some other families, and they got sick. And now she needs to go find this mysterious place on a map. And so XR935 and his 2 friends set off to help her, even though it's against the law. They should turn her in. And so the big robot government is hunting them down. It's adventure. We learn about humanity along the way, just like XR935 learns about humanity and what it means to be human. And there was another great robot book, but this one made the list.
That was agonizing.
Sorry, Charlie.
We'll discuss.
We'll have our say.
Yeah. Right, Charlie.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, I'm with you, Aaron. You go.
Okay, maybe he just likes you. Carol.
Hi, am I back?
You're back. Will, your voice is back.
Becky, if you move your mouth while I'm talking, it might work out.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe he just likes you. Whoops. It's by Barbara D. It is a Me Too movement story for the middle grade audience. It's kind of unique. I've never read anything about this topic, and we have read, as committee members, many, many books. It's a novel about experiencing harassment and unwanted attention from classmates. So it starts with a too long birthday hug from one of the popular basketball boys, but then it turns into comments and smirks and more unwanted touching. Neela's friends tell her that she's overreacting. Her mom is totally stressed at work right now, and her guidance counselor is on maternity leave. So there's no one really for Neela to turn to, and she becomes full of humiliation and confusion and self-doubt. And she was wondering whether or not the boys were really doing anything. So that confusion is kind of perfect because she's just a middle grader and she doesn't really know. All middle schoolers will relate to the discomfort over clothing styles and changing bodies. Her situation at home is also handled well. Parents do occasionally have job upheavals, and it's very concerning for kids. I especially like that the boys were finally dealt with in a constructive way that made them understand the effects that their behavior had on Neela and that it wasn't just a joke. So this book at my school is super popular. The writing style and the short chapters keep the action moving briskly. There's, I guess I should have marked some, but the chapters are very short, and I think it would be a great read aloud for middle school.
Okay. All right, N is for new kid. So Yvonne, you are on.
All right. So hi there, everybody. I really, really appreciated this graphic novel by Jerry Craft. This is the story of a young man, Jordan, who is going to, he lives in Washington Heights, and he he wants to go to art school. He's a cartoonist, very much like the author, who has a sketchbook with him all the time, and he's always drawing pictures, and he really wants his parents to send him to art school. And they decide, as parents often do, that what they have gotten the money together to send him to is a really prestigious private school that's in another neighborhood, and where their son will definitely be a minority. The characters in this book are wonderful. This is so contemporary, and it's so right on time. And there, Jordan, for the first time, is like in a place where he's a minority. He doesn't know anybody. A lot of the kids have been together since preschool. And so he's not just learning to navigate his way through school, he's learning how to make new friends and to get along with people that he feels are really different than he is. And the wonderful thing is, this could be like this really kind of bland, warm, you have to make your way through the world kind of story, and it's fantastic in how contemporary and incisive and witty it is. Because part of the story is we're seeing the cartoons that Jordan is drawing about his experiences. So we see a lot of the story through his eyes. But then you meet some of the characters, and actually there are characters, the school is a predominantly white upper middle class school, but there are kids of other nationalities there. You get to meet them, you get hints about their struggles. You get to find out that there are characters that Jordan becomes best friends with another African-American boy who is also from a neighborhood similar to his, not the same neighborhood, but, you know, middle class, lower middle class, raised by his grandmother. And they both have run-ins with some of the other characters in the book. And I love the stories in here because the characters are really, really realistic. I also I love Jordan's parents. They reminded me of my parents. Their struggles with work. There's a conversation that the parents have about why they stayed in his mother and his father used to work for the same corporation. The father left and became a teacher. This comes up from time to time between the two parents because as a teacher, he doesn't make as much money as he once did. Really contemporary, really great story, a wonderful story to launch a lot of different discussions in class, like race, class, quality of life, microaggressions. A great learning tool, and actually I really just think children will enjoy this for the realistic behavior and the real, the very real story it tells. So yes, New Kid, great one.
All right. The next great Polly Fink. Jess, your book.
Okay. So the next great Polly Fink, just for some reason I can't see myself, so please let me know if I need to raise the book anymore or anything. So the next great Polly Fink is very funny. It made me laugh out loud repeatedly, and it's kind of hard to make me laugh out loud. So Caitlin Breen moves from her very average school in New York to a very small rural town in Vermont, where the school is only K to 7th grade. And her 7th grade class only has 10 kids in it. So she feels like she's moved into an entirely different world altogether. When she shows up on her first day of school, she opens the door to her classroom, and the first thing that gets said to her is, "You're not Polly Fink." So from the start, Caitlin needs to figure out who in the world this Polly Fink is that everyone keeps talking about. So Polly Fink was the prankster of the 7th grade. Depending on who you talk to, he was a troublemaker or he was the funniest kid in school. And Caitlin gets roped into a contest that the other kids in her class decide they're going to have. They decide they have this gap now that Polly Fink is gone, and they need the next great Polly Fink. So they start their own reality show style competition to figure out who the next great Polly Fink is going to be. It includes challenges like Talk Like Shakespeare Day and hiding in the principal's office as long as you can without getting caught. which is something that Polly famously did. It's really, really funny. Caitlin goes on this great journey of figuring out her place in this very new town. The town's also dealing with struggles that are really relevant, like school. There's a big risk of the school closing due to lack of funding. It's a small town where a lot of people have lost their jobs, and people are just struggling all around. So it's something that's really relevant to what's happening in our own state, but also that is very, very funny.
All right. I've got one. The Oddmeyer Changeling. This is by William Ritter, and it's about a pair of identical twins named Tin and Cole, who aren't exactly identical twins because one of them is actually a goblin. And what happens is that an extremely inept and distractible goblin deposited this changeling baby, and before he could remove the human baby, the spell took place. Wham! All of a sudden, he's got identical twins in the crib, and he didn't know which kid was the goblin and which kid was the human. So in a panic, he gives up and leaves them both there. So now these two boys have reached the age of 12, and they receive a message from the goblins saying that it is time for the changeling to return home to the goblin horde, which will then save the goblin horde and, frankly, save magic itself in the world. Love those. So the boys leave a note for their mom and set out through the wild wood and across the Oddmeyer swamp to reach the goblins, having a lot of dangerous adventures and encounters along the way, including with a weird girl named Fable, who turns out to be the daughter of the Queen of the Wood, and a little creature named a Hinky Pink who wears a candle in his beard, and a monster who lurks in the thorns. One thing I really loved about this book is it's got a great mother. Their mother does not stay home. In most children's books, there's a big urge to get rid of the parents, get the mother and father off the stage so the kids can have all the adventures on their own. Well, this mother reads the note and she heads out into the wild wood and across the swamp after her boys. And she's terrific. She's kind, present, powerful, defending her kids. She does not consider one of them a changeling and one of them her real son. They're both her real sons. She's a great mother, and she's alive, which is unusual for a Canfield Fisher book. So The Oddmeyer, and there's a sequel due out soon. So, okay. Oh, another O, Other Words for Home. That's you, Yvonne.
Okay, great. So, Other Words from Home is a story written by Jasmine Warga. It is a story of a young girl who is from Syria, and her family decides that she and her mother must leave because the bombing started in their town, and her mom is pregnant. And they have relatives in the United States, so they go to stay with them. But the beautiful thing about this story is it's all told in verse. It's all poetry.
Hey, Yvonne, this is Jennifer. We can't see the book that well. Okay. If you can maybe a little bit closer to if you want to hold the cover up to the screen just so they can see it for a second.
How's that?
A little bit back. Maybe just put it directly over your face for a second. There we go. Okay. Now they see the cover, and you can move it.
Thank you for telling me, because I can't see myself.
We can totally understand. No problem.
Right. Okay. So there you go. Jasmine Warga, Other Words for Home. But the loveliest thing about this book is it's all poetry. It's all written in verse. And the wonderful thing I think about that is that, as you're reading the story, it's less like a common narrative and it's more like a distillation of the main character's feelings. She's a young girl named Jude. Jude is about 12 years old. And then she and her mother go to America, someplace they've never been before, and they stay with family members, her uncle and his wife, and their daughter, Sarah. So she has a cousin, Sarah. And there's so many things. I always feel like there's so many things I could say. I don't want to give the whole narrative away, but of course there's a story of Jude, the main character, trying to find her way. So she's going to an American school and she meets these kids and she deals with things like anti-Muslim sentiment because unlike her very Americanized cousin Sarah, she chooses to wear a headscarf. And there are all the great questions about what does home mean, what does nationality mean. There's a wonderful conversation between Jude and Sarah in this book. I like the way that the author weighs different experiences. She doesn't necessarily decide for you what you're supposed to think about the characters. She presents the characters and then you get to decide what you think. And Jude does have experiences with people who have anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim sentiments, but she also becomes friends with one of the kids. She decides to be in the school production of Beauty and the Beast, and she gets the role of, it's based on Disney's Beauty and the Beast, so she gets the role of a feather duster, which is really, it's just everything she says about her new culture and living with her family. And of course her family speaks Arabic, so the wonderful thing about this is there's some Arabic vocabulary in it, and people, as she's learning English, she still uses words from home. And so it is a lovely book, and it doesn't take that long to read, but it's great for discussion because of the way it's written in this poetic form, and I think that enhanced the story a lot. So Other Words from Home, a great one. Also great for classroom discussion.
The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise. Aaron. Oh, I love this book. Aaron?
I do too. Yep. All right. Can you hear me?
Yep. There you are.
Okay. Here it is. Okay. The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise. And I did look up how to say his name, but I'm going to botch it as well. It's Dave Gummenhart. Anyway, this book is a father and daughter traveling across the country on a school bus. And the girl's name is Coyote, the father's name is Rodeo, and it sounds like a nice, lovely adventure, but really what they're doing is they're running away from a tragedy that happened where the mother and Coyote's two sisters were killed. And Rodeo does not want to go back to their home in Washington. So they have a bus and they're traveling around. Coyote finds out from her grandmother that they're about to tear up this park near where she used to live. And in the park is buried a last memory treasured box that has things that her mother and her sisters and Coyote put in there. And Coyote wants to go and rescue that before this park is bulldozed and wrecked. But she knows she has to sneakily convince Rodeo to get back home. He refuses to go. So Coyote comes up with this plan, and along the way they meet all kinds of characters, including Gladys the goat. And but before they can get on the school bus, and all these other characters have their own journeys they need to take, but before they get on the school bus, answer 3 important questions. What's your favorite book? What's your favorite place on this planet Earth? And what's your favorite sandwich? All fabulous questions. This book gives you all kinds of feels. Like you cry, you laugh, you get mad, and it's a fabulous, fabulous book.
Loved it. All right. Roll with it. Yvonne.
Okay. All right. So another really good story about a young woman, Ellie. Ellie has MS, so she spent most of her life up until this point in a wheelchair. Now, I know that sounds like the opening for an after-school special, and I want to tell you, this character is so good. Ellie is a wonderful character. She has serious fire in the belly because her goal is to one day become a celebrity chef. And so a lot of this book is really kind of cool because she talks about how she found out about cooking, and she, in like the first Julia Child recipe she ever did. But it's also very reality grounded because not only is Ellie in a wheelchair, she and her mother don't have a lot of money. They are really just trying to get by, and then her mom finds out that Ellie's grandfather is starting to have problems with his memory and Alzheimer's. So they decide to move to the town where Ellie's grandmother and grandfather live, so Ellie's mom can give her grandparents some support. And that's great in some ways. For Ellie, that's wonderful because she loves her grandmother and she thinks she's great. But now she has to adjust to living in a new town, new school theme, has to make friends. And she's very much aware that people have certain perceptions about children in wheelchairs, and she didn't want any of that. She doesn't want to be treated differently, even though she does have to have somebody look over her, she has to have an adult with her at different times at school. She has to go to these doctor's appointments. Her mom is completely overwhelmed with trying to work a new job and getting Ellie to her importance. And it's just a whole bunch of real life stuff. They're very colorful characters. Her grandparents live in a trailer park, so she meets some other kids that live there, and she becomes good friends with them at school. It's really a great narrative because it ties in family relations and creating a family of your own and learning to deal with. I like this book because there's adversity in it, but it's not the primary story. The story is really about Ellie and her trying to become friends with people, but the fact that she really stays true to herself is a remarkable thing about this story. So, story plot, very realistic, characters, really, really interesting and great. And this is a good one for people who want to talk about how ableist our society is and want to talk about children with some disabilities in a realistic way. I thought the materials in here were quite realistic. So another good one. Roll with it.
Okay, scary stories for young foxes, which I'll tell you nearly put me gibbering under the table. It's a terrific book. Nicole?
Yes, scary stories for young foxes. Gather around, my little kits. It's the haunted season. Do you want to hear some stories that will scare the white into your tails? How about I tell you about the yellow, a sickness that will make even your own mother see you as food and try to bite you. And if she bites you, you'll get the yellow too. Or I might tell you of a human in the forest who takes the essence of animals and puts them into the pages of a book and stuffs their skin with straw and grass. Or maybe I'll tell you about Mr. Scratch, whose lilac scent will follow you into the forest until, well, you look a little shaken up already. Maybe you should go home and come back when you've lost your milk teeth. 7 little kits go out into the night to find the old storyteller. Will any of them be brave enough to stay until the end of the story? Kids will love this book. I know my kids did, and it doesn't stay on the shelf at my library.
Yeah. Okay, Song for a Whale. Lori.
Yes, Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly. Iris is 12 years old, and she's a top-notch radio repair person and tech genius. She hears about a whale, Blue 55, who for some reason can't make whale song that other whales can understand. So Blue 55 is basically alone in the ocean, alone in the world. The wonderful twist to the story is that Iris herself is deaf. So the story is about her going out to create a song with the help of people at school for Blue 55 so that he can feel like he's not alone in the world. And of course, that's part of Iris's story, that she sometimes feels alone in the world too. She enlists the help of her grandmother, a grandmother we all wish we could have. I had great grandmothers, but this grandmother you'd want in your corner as well. It's a wonderful side story is the grandmother's also dealing with grief, her own grief. The grandfather has died. And so this journey of Iris creating this song, trying to get this song to Blue 55 so Blue 55 can hear the song and not feel alone, and her grandmother helping her is just this wonderful journey. I almost didn't, and everybody in the community knows this, I almost didn't nominate this book because I thought, well, now that ending's a little far-fetched. But I have to tell you, after, I'm sure we're all catching up on our YouTube videos right now. There are all those videos out there of ocean animals who actually help people or ask for help. And so it really made the ending like just a wow ending for me instead of a, I don't know about that. Instead, I ended up loving it. So, Song for a Whale. My 3rd and 4th graders loved it. We did it as a read aloud already. Great.
Okay. Stepsister.
All
Which I
right.
so loved except for the high-heeled shoe on the cover. Yvonne.
All right. So, Stepsister. And as far as I'm concerned, I am getting to do my best book for the last because this is a great, great book. It was one of the books I read early on, and I like this. So, I think this story actually fits better in the category of young adult. What this is about, as you may have guessed, is the story of Cinderella, but told from an entirely different point of view. And this is written by the author Jennifer Donnelly. This author has a wonderful way with turn of phrase and describing characters and talking about society. The story takes place in 18th century France. We all know what happened to Cinderella. Cinderella gets to marry the prince and presumably one day becomes the queen. But what happens to the family members that get left behind? Well, that's this story. This is the story of Cinderella's 2 stepsisters, one of whom is the main character, Isabel. And Isabel is the stepsister who tried to cut off her toes to fit into the glass slipper. And, you know, she, of course, is found out, as was her sister found out, and so now they live in this village. And they have to cope with the fact that now, you know, not only did neither one of them marry the prince, they now have to take care of their mother. Cinderella's father is gone. He's deceased at this point. There's a lot in this book. It's not overstated, but now these women have to make their way in the world, and since it's 18th century France and they're all women and they all have some social station, not enough social station to live on their wealth, but just enough that they don't starve, they still have to have patrons in their community that will help them. And nobody wants to help them because they are the evil stepmother and evil stepsister. You know, there are all these horrible rumors about them and there are all these things they have to deal with. So why is this a great book? It's a great book because Isabel is a really great character. I mean, she's gutsy, she's determined. She is not, because she didn't have Cinderella's looks, she was not compelled to be this dainty little thing, and since she's not going to get the prince anyway, she might as well be who she is. There's a wonderful romance in here about her and one of the local craftsman's sons. The other wonderful thing about this book that gives it this fantastic 18th century flair is that part of the plot is about a bet between chance and fate. And they have an ongoing bet about Isabel's life. Fate is, of course, very, history is written, you can't do anything about it. And Chance, who is this wonderful scalawag of a character, is like, no, you always have chance. You always have the opportunity to change your life. So that is another element to the story that's wonderful. The language in this book is so evocative. Isabel is a wonderful character. One of the things that Ms. Donnelly does that I love a lot is she never tells you in great detail what anybody looks like, so you're allowed to make judgments about them yourself. So Stepsister, great story, great room for conversation. A good one for the burgeoning feminists among us, and even those of us who, belong in the camp of strong female characters. Go, women's literature. Good book, good time.
Okay, guys, we're now edging up into our B-book time, so we probably should pick up the pace just a little bit. Nicole, the story that cannot be told.
The story that cannot be told is set in communist Romania in 1989. It's right before the revolution of 1989, and it's about Ileana. Ileana is 10. She is a storyteller. She tells dangerous stories, but she tells them quietly in the privacy of her own home. She has a poet uncle who writes dangerous poems, and he disappears one day, and she finds a surveillance bug in her apartment and has to be sent away to live with her grandparents in a remote mountain village. And this is all about the power of stories, how stories can be a dangerous thing, but they can be a source of safety and comfort. It's got great history, culture, and fairy tales mixed into, and it's a testament to one of the longest standing truths about humanity. Our power is in our storytelling. Kept it brief.
Yes, super. This was our pact. Carol. Oh, this was our Strange Bear category.
Yes, this was from the Strange Bear category. If you love Studio Ghibli movies like Spirited Away and My Friend Totoro, you will love This Was Our Pact by Ryan Andrews. This fantastic and beautiful graphic novel of friendship and adventure. Can anyone see me? I still see you, Becky.
Yep, I can see you.
I can see you.
Okay, good. Graphic novel of friendship and adventure. It takes place at night, so most of the art is in dreamy blues and soft yellows and moody grays. If you can see that. Flying fish, strange bear. That's for Becky. Every year, people of Ben's village send paper lanterns down the river during the autumn equinox festival, and every year Ben and his friends want to know where they go. So this year they make a pact. They will follow these lanterns on their bikes. They will never stop no matter what. Only one by one his friends drop out until it's only Ben and that weird kid from school, Nathaniel, who are still riding. Soon enough, Ben realizes how much he needs Nathaniel's help and his friendship. This is full of delightful oddities like the dapper, eloquent bear with the giant backpack, a tiny witchy woman with huge eyes who makes potions from the sun, massive crows who draw bird's eye maps, a night swim in a cave full of stars, an aerial tramway over a hidden village, dogs that walk on water, and countless marvels. This is a world where travel and escape mean the same thing. That's it.
It's great. To Night Owl from Dogfish. Erin.
Okay, To Night Owl from Dogfish. It is by Holly Goldberg Sloan and Meg Walzer. It is the story of two girls who don't know each other, Avery and Bette. One lives in New York City, one lives in Los Angeles. And start an email from Bette to Avery. They're being sent to the same summer camp by their fathers. And it turns out that the fathers have an ulterior motive. They want the girls to become best friends because the fathers are dating and the girls don't just find out about this. And so the girls hatch a plot to break their fathers apart. But at summer camp, they actually become best friends, but the fathers break up. So then it becomes a plot to get the fathers back together again. And this story is told through emails and letters. I don't know if you can see, there's all these like R-E, just like you would in the reply for emails. It's funny. It's a great book with a kooky grandmother too. We've already talked about grandmothers. And that's my quick talk about this book.
Loved it. Okay, Tristan Strong. Jess.
Tristan Strong punches a hole in the sky. All of the books on this list are fantastic. This one is probably my own personal favorite, though. So Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky is about Tristan Strong, who comes from a legacy of boxers. He's just lost his very first boxing match. Tragically, his friend Eddie has just died in a terrible school bus accident, and Tristan feels guilty that he wasn't able to save him. So Tristan's going through a lot, and his parents decide to send him to go live with his grandparents in the South. And the first night Tristan is there, this strange, sticky little dog-like creature shows up and wants to steal the one thing Tristan has remaining of Eddie, which is his journal, because Eddie likes to write down stories. So Tristan chases Dumb Baby through the woods outside his grandparents' farm. He punches a hole in the ground at this tree, trying to get the book back, and unwittingly punches a hole in the sky of a place called Mid-Pass, where all of these characters from famous African and African-American folktales live. So he gets to meet John Henry and Brer Rabbit, and he finds out that they're fighting these awful monsters, these chain monsters, and there's these massive boat monsters, and they're scary and terrifying, and Tristan feels responsible because part of this is his fault for punching the hole in the sky. So he teams up with John Henry and Brer Rabbit and all these other fantastic characters to try and save Mid-Pass. It's a fantastic fantasy adventure book. And it's a really great read. It's a really great time. It'll expose kids to some fairy tales and folk tales that they might not be as familiar with. And it's just a fantastic adventure.
All right. Oh, me. We're Not From Here. This is a great discussion book. It's set at a time when Earth has become totally uninhabitable. Mars isn't really panning out very well for humans, and so the human race, as a group, has decided to emigrate to the planet Choom, which has agreed to take them in. And this is a world of several different alien races, including the Jury, who look like giant mosquitoes who appear on the cover. However, by the time they get to Choom, after 20 years in cryogenic sleep, the government of Choom has turned over and is no longer interested in accepting a whole bunch of human immigrants. So they decide to run a test in which Lan, the main character, and his family are going to be the human test case to see if human beings can behave themselves and get along with the residents of Choom. And one interesting thing about the book is that you never know Lan's gender. The author is very careful to leave Lan, you don't know whether Lan is a trans kid or boy, girl, which, makes for another aspect of discussion in this book. But basically, it's about assimilation, immigration, tolerance, and possibly overturning the government. Mm-hmm. Great discussion book. Oh, right. White Bird, Charlie.
Yes, White Bird by R.J. Palacio. Of course, she is most known for her book Wonder. And this book is kind of a return to the Wonder universe, although it's not a sequel in a direct sense. For one thing, this is a graphic novel, and it's a wonderfully drawn graphic novel. In this book, we're reintroduced to the character of Julian. And if you remember back from Wonder, Julian was not a nice kid. And we find that he's come to really regret his past actions as a bully. And he shares his feelings with his grandmother about, how he's feeling about, bullying people in the past. And his grandmother begins to relate her history as a Jewish child growing up in Nazi-occupied France. And it's a story of survival. She has to go into hiding, and her survival is purely based on the help of others. It is a story in which being a decent person is an act of bravery. And it's a story of being a decent person may actually cost you your life. In the end, Julian finds redemption. An outstanding new book from the Wonder universe, White Bird.
All right, next up is the second of our untrustworthy cat books. Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs?
It's also the
Hello.
second of our nonfiction books. It's something completely different than anything I've read during my time working on Dorothy's list. It is a book written by mortician Caitlin Dowdy, and she's an excellent writer. It's questions that children have sent in to her, and she took the best ones and she wrote very clearly and humorously about them. Questions such as, what will happen if you die in space? And it's got these lovely illustrations in it. They're very hilarious. And can you give your grandma a Viking funeral? It allows children and adults to have conversations about death. It makes a great book for just a child to read or an adult to read or for you to read together, and it doesn't have to be read in order. We couldn't put it down. It's definitely one of my favorite nonfiction books I've ever read, and I dressed to coordinate with it, so.
Perfect. Okay, Wolf Called Wander. Charlie.
Yes, I'm back up again. I keep on getting this confused with the movie A Fish Called Wanda. They always want to say Wanda, but this is a wolf called Wander, and in it we have a young wolf named Swift, and Swift is a wolf pup, and he's raised by a very close-knit pack of wolves. The elder wolves teach Swift and his brothers and sisters all the aspects of survival, of being out on their own. And then one day, the pack is tragically attacked by a rival wolf pack. And the Swift's pack is just spread out. Many are killed, and Swift is chased from his home territory. And that's where the story really begins, is Swift facing all these perils in nature and using the skills that he was taught by his elders to survive. And throughout you're wondering, will Swift survive this ordeal? And will Swift find a new home? It's I think it's our classic nature book on our list this year. So, A Wolf Called Wanda.
And there's a map.
There is a map. And
it's
based on a true wolf that they traced its route as it traveled around Oregon.
Okay. The World Ends in April. Is this a title for today or what? Mm-hmm. This is by Stacy McAnulty. The main character, Elle, has a grandpa who's a survivalist. And so he's spent Elle's childhood and that of her two younger brothers in preparing them to bug out and prepare for catastrophe at any moment. So they have these bug out bags, and they do these drills where they're supposed to be able to grab their bags and go at a moment's notice and survive. Well, Elle is kind of primed for this survivalist mindset, and she discovers a source online from a Harvard scientist who claims that there's an asteroid that's about to hit the world in April and destroy all life in sight. So she's determined to spread the word and help her classmates prepare for what she calls, TEOTWAWKI, Teotwaki, the end of the world as we know it. But it's a real uphill battle. And it's a good discussion book because it brings out aspects of fake news and vetting sources. And, occasionally there are things that are wrong on the internet. So the world ends in April. And last, Z is for Zenobia July. Erin.
Yes, so Zenobia July by Lisa Bunker. Imagine getting to start your life over. And that's what Zenobia gets to do. She moves to Maine to go with her aunts. And is a girl, so she's finally getting a chance to live. She really is.
Aaron?
But
Okay.
here, did anybody hear any of that?
No, you froze up.
Oh no!
You might want to actually. You might want to turn off your camera. It seems like we might be maxing out the bandwidth that you're having, and we can see if we can still hear you.
How's that?
Yeah, and we all saw the cover.
Okay. I'll try and do this really quick. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. Basically, imagine getting to start your life over, and that's what Zenobia gets to do. She moves to a small town in Maine to live with her aunts. Zenobia is a transgender girl, and she's getting, for the first time, get to live life as her true self. But she has to start middle school, a new school, and she's worried that people are going to find out about her past. And so she gets help from her two aunts and this wonderful character, Uncle Sprink, who is a drag queen. And she makes friends, and she helps solve there's another problem of the book is that there is some hateful memes that are being posted on the school website. And Zenobia, because in her previous life lived on her own, basically, she became this genius computer hacker. And so she's trying to solve the mystery of who is sending these hateful memes at the school website. And along the way, she learns to accept who she really is and not be so afraid. But it's a great book for those windows and mirrors, and it has a lot of LGBTQ representation out there.
Okay. Well, that is the list, guys. That's the A list. And we've now got less than half an hour to run through the B list.
Becky, let me interrupt you for 1 second. This is Jennifer. In the chat, I am putting a link to the B list written out. It's also, it's on the page that was linked in the email I sent out to registrants. So if you want to follow along, just go to the link that I just put in the chat, and you can see all the titles and authors and all of that good stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we may not be able to totally babble our way through these in less than half an hour, but we will give it a try. These are the books that got away. This is always fun. This is a chance to talk about books that we, may have loved, but that our co-committee members did not necessarily love. So number 1 is August Isle. That's Lori.
Hi there again, August Isle. Very quickly, Miranda has always been enamored by these wonderful postcards of this wonderful island paradise that her mother used to visit when she was younger. However, her mother doesn't talk about it anymore, refuses to talk about it, in fact, and refuses to go back. However, Miranda does get to go back. And so it's a wonderful summer read. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. She goes back, she makes some friends, she's liking the place, she thinks it's great, and she just does not understand why her mother refuses to go back. So the story is the unraveling of that mystery. I really enjoyed it. It just didn't feel like it was maybe unique enough for the list.
Okay, how about Camp Shady Crook, Jess?
Camp Shady Crook is just a really fun read. So the main character, Archie, goes to this Camp Shady Brook every year. The camp is in Vermont. It's not a good representation of Vermont. The camp is gross and dilapidated and falling apart. The camp director is mean, and she just could not care less about these kids or their welfare. But Archie goes there every summer to con all the other kids. He's got them convinced that he's actually rich and that he, has this really wonderful life, and he uses that to con them. But this year, Vivian also gets sent to this camp, and she thinks that she's going to con some kids too. And so she and Archie sort of end up teaming together. They're kind of frenemies. And in the end, they kind of play the ultimate con on the camp director in order to sort of get the camp turned around a little bit. But it's just a really fun, entertaining story.
Cog, our second robot book.
Yes, this year's last committee meeting will go down in history as the great robot debate between The Last Human and Cog. I actually said we should put both of them on. Cog is a great story. He's 12. He's trying to learn how to be more human. And he does that by trial and error. Like one of his decisions he has to make is he's like, I have to brush my teeth. Toothpaste and Whizzy cheese look a lot alike. Is Whizzy cheese as good as toothpaste in brushing my teeth? So he's going through life trying to build his repertoire of knowledge through experience. And one thing he does is he goes out, he walks across the street, and he gets hit by a car, and he's damaged, and he has to go back to the place where he came from, which he finds out is not a very friendly place or a good place or a place he wants to stay. He wants to go back and be with the woman who is teaching him how to be human, and this is the story of that adventure. He runs into Ada, his sister, who is actually a destruction robot, aggressive attack robot. He meets a dog robot named Proto. He meets a wonderful robot named Trashbot, whose main purpose in life is to clean things up, and Car, the fifth robot. Great book. Practice your read aloud robot voices infused with humanity. That's what this book's all about. It's wonderful. I wish I could say more. We have 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Dear Sweet Pea, Erin.
Okay, let me try this. Okay. Dear Sweet Pea. It's the story of Sweet Pea, Patricia Sweet Pea. Her parents are going through a divorce. The father decides to get the house that is 2 houses down from where her mom lives. So, and there are identical houses, exactly the same for her. She also has to deal with an ex-best friend, and her neighbor is advice on this. They have to go leave for a while to take care of a sick sister, and asks Sweet Pea to just water her plants and collect her mail and send her the advice letters that she gets. Well, Sweet Pea decides that it doesn't do any harm to open some of that mail and read it and maybe respond to some of the letters. So she takes on the journey of an advice columnist as a middle schooler, and she might give out good advice, but she doesn't always follow through on it. I just like this book because it was kind of quirky, it was funny, and that Sweet Pea just seemed like a real kid with flaws and all.
Okay, Finding Orion, Erin. You've got 2 in a row.
I should have kept my mic on in video. Okay. Finding Orion is a quirky kind of story. The main character, the family finds out that the grandfather has died by a clown showing up and doing a singing telegram to say that the grandfather has died. And they are in a search to find the grandfather's sister has made up the scavenger hunt to be able to find the grandfather. And so this family goes on this adventure to find where the grandfather is. And along the way, they become closer as a family. It's funny. I laughed out loud when I was reading it. Kind of unusual story. And I know I'm not doing the best talking to it, but I'm feeling the pressure of trying to do this in 30 seconds. It's by the author of Miss Bixi's Last Day. There was kind of that same element of, when they were searching for the things for the teacher, they're kind of searching to find the grandfather, and along the way find each other.
Okay, Genesis Begins Again. Yvonne.
Okay, so Genesis Begins Again. This is a very interesting story. Genesis is a young African-American girl who has parents who are having issues in their marriage. And the part about that is really hard because what happens is her dad is always in and out of jobs. And so the story begins with actually Genesis' family getting evicted. And so, this has happened, or things like this have happened so many times that Genesis's mom is like, I don't know if I can put up with this anymore. Meanwhile, Genesis herself has begun to dislike herself. And even though that's like common fare for middle school stories, this story gets way more deeply into some of the cultural darkness of racial issues in this country. And whereas I found Jerry Craft's book, New Kid, very realistic about some of those things, this goes in another direction with some of the things that minority characters deal with among themselves about their place in society. It's a good story. Genesis finds herself in music and is able to sing and able to work it through some of her emotional issues in her school choir. And she also finds friends who like her for who she is, and she has to, you know, come into her own. She's used to being both praised and abused by her parents, and she has to kind of come away from who they are and realize that they grew up with problems that were similar to hers. So it is a really good coming of age story. I like a lot of the supporting cast in this. There are teachers in this that are good. She ends up having a math tutor who is also a young African American man, who does say to her, look, you know, the things that you're experiencing, other people experience them too, really. I like this book, again, because of a realistic portrayal of social ills that do really happen, and it's not a fluffy book. Also, I like this book because everything's not wrapped up neatly in the end, but you feel better for the protagonist and the trial she's faced, and you feel like she's definitely becoming stronger enough to face some more. So Genesis Begins Again, a good one for discussion also.
Okay, guys, The Green Children of Woolpit.
Woo, go Green Children.
Isn't that a great cover? The Green Children of Woolpit is based on a medieval English legend. It's set in the 12th century, where clearly middle grade type aged kids have all the problems that middle grade aged kids have today. Agnes is growing apart from her best friend Glory, who's now interested in clothes and boys and thinks Agnes is childish and silly for her interest in fairy tales. Then Agnes discovers these two green children in a wolf pit trap outside of town. And it turns out that these green children are connected to a really creepy world of fairies. It's a good read. Okay, next one is How High the Moon.
Okay, How High the Moon. So this is a very interesting story. It's a speculative history book in some ways. The author, Karen Parsons, writes the story in a split narrative among three kids who live in Mississippi. And the main, if you had to pick one who is the main character, it's two girls and one boy. They all live with Ella's grandmother. Ella is the character who I really think of as being the main character. Her mother has left the small town that Ella still lives in to try to make it as a singer in Boston. And so there's really great stuff here. This story takes place in the 40s. Ella has been dreaming of the day when her mother writes her and says, you can come and join me in the city, and it happens in this story. And so there is a story here where Ella goes to visit her mother, and she goes to the north for the first time, and she notices that, you know, public bathrooms are not segregated, water fountains aren't segregated, and so there's some really amazing things about living in the north, but there are also other things about living in the north, like she's from a very rural area, she's in a city, she's always around people, she lives in this small apartment with her mother and her mother's roommate, and it makes for some very interesting situational narrative. And then, during that part of the story, it's split back to the town where she's from, and one of the kids that she grew up with is accused of a crime. The child is accused, he's more than a child, he's a young teenager, but he's accused of killing two white children. And so there's all these things that about, justice at that time. Is justice possible for African Americans? There's a trial and how the trial turns out. This is yet another book that, even though the story is fraught with drama and really hardship, a lot of hardship, the characters are very real, and you start to really care about them. And when the narrative splits, you're like, oh, what's happening to this kid? And sometimes you get different points of views of the same event. So I like this a lot because this is yet another story where everything is not tied up neatly at the end, but you feel pretty sure that the characters will survive. So this is a good one too. A lot of social issues to talk about in this one. Some things about autonomy, some things about finding your roots. Good. How High the Moon?
Okay, Lalani of the Distant Sea, Jess.
Okay. So Lalani, I don't know if it's Lalani or Lalani actually, but Lalani of the Distant Sea is a great adventure book. So Lalani lives in this small little island village where one of the most prestigious jobs you can have is to be a sailor, and the men who are sailors go off and they try to discover this Mount Isa. And so they live near Mount Kana, and Mount Isa is sort of like considered like a paradise, and they've been trying to find it forever. And Lalani, her mother gets sick, her stepfather and her stepbrother are really cruel, and so she kind of decides that there's not a whole lot for her here, and that, well, maybe she could just try and see what happens. So this is her adventure of trying to find Mount Isa. It is a tiny bit slow in the beginning, but once you get past that part, it's really exciting. There's great explanations of all the different interesting creatures in this world. So it's just a really great adventure book that stars a female character.
Oh, Light in the Lake. Oh, Light in the Lake is by Sarah Bauman. This is our lake. It's set in Vermont. The main character, Addie, has a twin brother, Amos, who is drowned. Well, searching for this, what he believes is this pseudo-magical, gigantic creature who lives in the lake and reveals itself through little gold sparkles. So we've got Champ, basically, versus science. Addie's kind of a science kid, hooks up, wants to be an aquatic biologist, hooks up with a summer science program, and discovers that the lake has pollution problems and tracks down where these problems are coming from, which is an answer which isn't very congenial to all her farming neighbors. But it's interesting. It's about grief. It's about family coming together, coping, and then, of course, magic and awe versus science, both of which have their places. So, Light in the Lake, and it's a Vermont book. Line Tender, Aaron.
So this is it's The Line Tender, and it's by Kate Allen. It is just like a middle grade book where there is a dead parent. Kate's mother is a marine biologist and she died and lives with her father. And it's like a lot of the 2019 books. It takes place in Cape Cod. And Kate's father is dealing with the grief of having lost his wife. And then early on in the story, Kate loses her best friend over a tragic accident. And so she's also having to deal with grief and a new grief. At the same time, sharks are showing up off the coast of Cape Cod, which, as you know, is, really happening. And so she decides to look at her mom's old research about it because her mom was a marine biologist and was trying to figure out why all these sharks were coming back to Cape Cod. And in the process, Lucy, the main character, gets in touch with her mom's old professor and learns more about her mom and helps her dad work through the grief. And there are these beautiful drawings of sharks in the book that I just loved. So that is The Line Tender.
Lizzie Flying Solo, Carol.
All right. Hi. I'm back. Can you see me?
No.
Let me try again.
Yes.
Yay!
You're on.
Hey, I do not have a copy of the book. It's at my school. My school is closed up. I think it was checked out. But Lizzie Flying Solo is by Nancy Turner Stevenson. It is about a girl named Lizzie who, with her mom, they find themselves suddenly homeless when her dad gets arrested for embezzling. They move into Good Hope, a shelter for people in transition. Lizzie is lonely and devastated and angry at her dad, and at her new school, she avoids making new friends because of her family situation. Despite her reluctance to make new connections, she ends up working at a nearby stable. She makes friends there and devotes herself to working with a troubled young pony who she dreams of owning one day. I could definitely imagine myself as 12-year-old Lizzie hiding in the woods and watching the horses and the riders at Birchwood Barn and longing to belong there. And when you read Lizzie Flying Solo, you will be able to imagine it too.
Love Lizzie. Okay, oh me. Lost Girl by Anne Ursu. It's set in Minneapolis. It's got a pair of identical twins. You know, we all love identical twins. Iris and Lark, who have been inseparable. But now they're in 5th grade. Their parents have decided it's time to break up the twins and set them out on some independent adventures of their own. So they're in different classes. They're in different after-school activities. Iris, who has always been the fact finder, more out there twin, is very upset because she feels that Lark, who's kind of dreamy and artistic, isn't going to be well taken care of in this new situation. So in the meantime, while they're dealing with all of this, and you see it all through their contrasting report cards and the descriptions of their very different clothes, you see how different these twins are, even though they're identical. There's a magic element to it. There's a new antique store that is opened in town called Treasure Hunters that seems to have something to do with the fact that treasures are disappearing from the Minneapolis area. So there's a mystery, there's magic, there's twins. What more could you ask? Lost Girls. Me and Sam Handle the Apocalypse. Lori?
All right. Me and Sam Handle the Apocalypse. A nice little realistic fiction book. Jessie is neuroatypical. She's on the spectrum. But the book's not about that. It's her mother is stationed overseas with her bomb-sniffing dog, and her father's just been arrested because money has disappeared from the library fund. So the book is the story of Jessie trying to get to the bottom of that with the help of her new and only friend. And it's also about it's got a great dog character, Sam. She's trying to train Sam, a Pomeranian, to be a bomb-sniffing dog. And it's not going all that well. So it's a great book. You get to read about Jessie's life and how she's dealing with things like she does things like burn all her tank tops because they were itchy. She has trouble getting along with some other kids at school. And those are all things that are happening, but it's a fun story because of all the other little side things that are going on and the way that her on the spectrumness is dealt with. It's just, she's a strong character. She's just dealing with it. She's just living life. And in the end, she and Sam are heroes, but it turns out his talent is not bomb sniffing. It's something else. Me and Sam.
Good for Sam.
Yeah.
The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James, Jess.
Okay, so by the way, I loved Me and Sam Handle the Apocalypse. It's adorable. So The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James. So Sunny is a character who has a lot going on. She's just had heart surgery. She has had a falling out with her best friend, so she's ready to spend the summer lonely. But she meets a new friend on the beach. And they become quick buddies. As well, Sunny has been raised all her life by her mother's best friend, and then suddenly her mother has shown back up and wants to build a relationship with Sunny. So there's lots of things happening. Sunny is trying to figure out who she is. She's trying to figure out who she likes. She gets convinced that this summer she needs to kiss a boy, and while she and her new friend are trying to do that, she also wonders if maybe it's her new friend that she wants to kiss instead. So it's a really great story about a girl who has a lot of happening in her life, which is reflective of how lives really are, and through all of that kind of figures out herself, figures out her voice, she figures out that she's a poet. It's I loved it. It was one of my favorites.
Okay, the missing piece of Charlie O'Reilly.
The missing piece of Charlie O'Reilly. Charlie O'Reilly has a little brother, Liam. He is a real pain in the butt. He's always messing up his room and getting into his comic collection until one day, Liam's not there anymore, and nobody remembers him. Charlie's the only one who remembers distinctly this little brother. But he knows he had a little brother. So he follows the clues to the old abandoned asylum. And so this is a spooky mystery about finding a piece of you that you know you've lost.
Okay, my Jasper June by Laurel Snyder. We've got kind of a drowning thing going on with the B list. Have you noticed that? The main character, Leah, is 13. Her family is devastated because her younger brother, Sam, has drowned. And Leah is blaming herself, in part, for this. She's resigning herself to spending a miserable, lonely summer at home. And then she meets this mysterious redhead named Jasper, who, it turns out, is camping out by herself in an abandoned house. And there, Leah and Jasper collaborate on inventing the vine realm, where they paint the inside of the house with vines. It's got aspects of Bridge to Terabithia, aspects of Swallows and Amazons. But even though Jasper looks like she's leading this wonderful, unconventional life, there's a really dark, dysfunctional thread running through all this. And basically, it's the story of two girls coming together to support each other through their different but similar troubles. Okay, pay attention, Carter Jones, Carol.
All right. I don't have a copy of this one either. I'm sorry.
I do. Hang on.
Cool.
I'll show it. You talk about cricket.
It is a Gary Schmidt book, so already you know it's going to be good. Carter Jones is astonished one morning, very early, to find a real English butler with a bowler hat and everything on his doorstep. Carter lives with his 3 younger sisters and his harried mother while his dad is in the military in Germany. Mr. Bowles Fitzpatrick, the butler, convinces the middle school to set up a cricket team and teaches Carter how to drive, even though Carter's only in 6th grade. Now, since this is a Gary Schmidt book, you can expect quirkiness and humor in with the drama. The butler grapples with Carter over the proper use of the English language. The family's dachshund, Ned, pukes on everything. Every chapter starts with a brief entry explaining cricket rules or terminology. And as a bonus, you will finally learn what a sticky wicket is.
The butler is wonderful. A Pirate's Life for She, Yvonne.
Okay, so I'm finally going to take a break from novels and walk right into history books. This is the book, A Pirate's Life for She, diligently researched by Laura Sook Duncombe. Oh my God, this is a good time. Even if you are going to use this as teachers as a history class, this author did this fantastic research project and put it in a book about women who have led completely unconventional lives as swashbucklers and bandits and all sorts of great things. I like this book in particular because I used to do historic reenacting, and this is exactly the stuff that I was researching, the lives of women at sea. And she goes through different countries and different eras. She starts like in the early Middle Ages, and she goes through the Middle Ages. And I believe the last character she talks about, the last historical character, because these are all real people, repeatedly, is like in the 19th century. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. The writing is this wonderful balance between, boy, these women were adventurous, do not try this at home. The other wonderful thing about this book, teachers, those of us who are feminists and some of us who are cultural subversives, is the author, Laura Duncombe, talks a lot about how the stories we know about these women may have ended the way they end because it was men who wrote the stories down. So she asks us all to think about the things we know about these characters and wonder whether or not that was the legacy they meant to leave, or whether or not they were being seen through this lens of, sexism. So good one. Pirate's Life for She. Check it out. It's great research.
Okay, guys, we probably, it's 11:05.
This is Jennifer. So Susan hasn't logged on yet that I can see, so you guys keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Planet Earth is blue then. Laurie, go for it. Laurie?
Is Planet Earth is blue on this list? Do we have that?
Yep. Updated list. Okay, let's skip to Queen of the Sea.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so I'm back with the graphic novel again. Queen of the Sea is an alt history book. So it's the author, Dylan McConis, kind of takes the story of what happened between Elizabeth and Mary Queen of Scots and takes artistic license with it. And this is a beautiful, beautiful book for a lot of reasons. It takes place in the Renaissance era. It's an alternate world to ours. So instead of Henry being on the throne, there's a King Edward. The main character has been raised on an island off of this world's version of Britain at a nunnery. And a mysterious visitor comes in the middle of the night, and everybody has to take care of her. My favorite thing about this, one of my favorite things about this book is not only is it a very interesting, intriguing story, there are these beautiful drawings in it that are not quite comic booky. They are kind of beautiful line drawings with these simple but very sensitive handlings of the characters in it. Most of the characters are female because they live at a nunnery. The Mother Superior is just a very interesting, very wonderful character. This is the main character on the cover here. This is also a wonderful slice of life book. It tells you a lot about the day-to-day of how people lived at this time in the Renaissance. Good character, good story. It is somewhat thick, but it has a little bit of everything in it. So, Queen of the Sea by Dylan McConis.
Gorgeous book.
Right. It looks like Susan has logged on, so I think we're going to have to end there. I think we only didn't get to like 3 books, maybe?
That's okay. So email us.
Which was pretty awesome. Thank you so much to Becky and the reading committee for all of your hard work over the past year. They have read hundreds of books, and this award obviously would not happen without them and their hard work. So if you could all do a little virtual round of applause in your chairs at home, we're all clapping and applauding you and all of your hard work. Thank you so much, and thank you to our committee members who are leaving for all of your hard work. We're sad, but we're also so excited for our new committee members to come on. So as we transition to this next part, I'm going to put up one of my slides here. So we're going to take a brief break while Susan gets set up. So you can use the restroom,